What's something you can't believe you had to explain to another adult? That Halloween has never and will never fall on Friday the 13th. It was my mom. Experienced this. It was my aunt. She had some meme that said Halloween that year was the first one to fall on Friday 13th in 666 years or some ridiculous crap like that. Press up when you want to go up in the elevator and down if you want to go down. She thought you had to guess where the elevator was, and if it was under you, let's say, you had to press up. Is she still stuck in an elevator somewhere? Some say she's still pressing buttons to this day. My wife and I had to explain to the neighbor that our dog is part of our family. And no, they can't just have him. Their kids wanted our dog. Which was cute. Until the mother also decided that she wanted our dog, and it was only fair that they got to have him on the weekends because we get to have him all week long. This happened to a friend of mine. It got to the point of this family taking the dog out of their yard while they were at work and then be seen taking it on walks a few days later in the same neighborhood. They ended up having to move the dog to her mom's place several suburbs over. That no matter how much you might want to put a camo pattern on your walls, you, not the paint, have to determine what that pattern looks like, and you will also have to purchase multiple cans of paint tinted differently because camo doesn't come out of a can that way. This is one of the rare times wallpaper is a reasonable choice. Insofar as camo walls are a reasonable choice. Had to explain to a neighbor that the sun and the moon were not the same thing. I don't believe in the moon. I think it's just the back of the sun. Moon truthers unite. In regards to the North and South poles, neither is the one that is always hot. I guess they were thinking about the equator. Well, sir, it's not illegal to serve food that tastes bad. No. This isn't a police issue. I had to explain to my friend that the Earth wasn't 2019 years old. Happy birthday to the ground. Yes, sir. When you sign up for insurance, you're agreeing to pay for it. I guess technically you only agree to make sure that the insurance company gets their money. They don't actually care if you pay it. 6 inches isn't 0.6 of a foot. She had been slowly, unknowingly, overcharging our company for materials for years. Unknowingly. Incompetently. The worst kind when you realize it. This reminds me of my ex-boss. I was paid hourly to the nearest quarter of an hour theoretically. If I clocked out at say 5:15, my check would be for having by 0.15 hours. When it should have been by 0.25 hours, 15 minutes being a quarter of an hour. Never made a stink about it. It's 1 of an hour. Whatever. But if I worked to say 5:45, I would get a check cut for by 0.45 hours. Maybe just mental error. I could see that. Get this. If I worked till the half hour, I'd get by 0.5 of an hour. So if I was ever running over, I'd always just sit out the 15 minutes before I swiped out. Wait. So for 15 minutes you got paid 0.15 of an hour. For 45 minutes you got paid 0.45 of an hour. But if you worked 30 minutes you got 0.5 and not 0.3. And no one figured this out? I had to explain to my mother that mussels are meat. A piece of meat was tough. And so I must have said something about what part of the cow the mussel came from. No. We weren't eating mussels. We were eating meat. She was sickened by the concept that anyone would eat mussels. Somehow this got to the point of her claiming that humans didn't have any meat on them because they aren't food. I did not in that argument. Humans have no meat. Meat is not mussels. Period. Oh. It turns out people are not part of the animal kingdom either. It was a dismal childhood. And there comes that "stop disrespecting me" part when someone younger starts winning an argument. My mom asked me why you couldn't see the borders of states when you were in an airplane. Before my first plane trip, my dad told me to watch for state borderlines as we flew over them. When I got back home, he teasingly asked if I'd seen one. I said, yes, I had. He was confused and asked me how. I said I saw the Arkansas state line when the pilot pointed out the Mississippi River. Had to explain to someone that islands don't tip over if you put too much weight on the edge. Hey. If you can get enough penguins to dance or jackhammer on the edge, anything is possible. As a server, there are so many times I have to explain to guests that chicken can't be cooked medium rare. I won't get salmonella. This is chicken, not salmon. That Earth has one moon. The new moon on the calendar every month confused her. I used to be a primary school teacher. We were planning our unit on space. So talking about planets, moons and stars etc. Two colleagues of mine, other teachers in their mid-30s. I was early 20s at that point, got really confused when I explained to them the moon wasn't a star. That it was a moon. They paused, looked at each other for a second and just said, "No," says mate. "That's just its name. It's actually a star." I tried explaining the difference but they were on the senior management team and because I was younger and more junior assumed they knew better. Canada is part of North America. Pretty much anything geography related. Most people are simply terrible at knowing where things are even within their own local regions. My friend worked at Office Depot and had to explain to a customer why he couldn't make him photocopies of a $20 bill. "Oh. Of course you can just photocopy $20 bills. I just slave here answering stupid questions for you because I enjoy the human interaction. Ha ha ha. When I worked at Office Depot the FBI pulled my drawer after a couple came in. They apparently got the really nice resume paper and were printing 20s. Apparently. Office Depot is where you go for your counterfeiting needs. I had to explain to a teacher, in front of her class, that a penguin was a bird. I didn't want to be like that but she was adamant that if it didn't fly, it wasn't a bird. Obviously she's right. Emus aren't birds either, they're bloodthirsty killing machines. We wouldn't have needed to fight a war against them if they were just birds. My dad had like 6 or 7 paid recurring charges for internet PRN and a lot of malware on his computer. I had to explain free PRN to my 67-year-old dad. So, that was something. I worked as the internet repair guy you get on the phone when you're having trouble briefly. Had a guy insist his internet was broken. All the diagnostics looked fine. Asked the basic router troubleshooting questions. Everything is fine. Finally asked him to just open up Internet Explorer and tell me what happens. He described a common homepage. I explained to him that his internet is working. He says it's not working like it used to. So I assume it's a speed issue and I walk him through a speed test. He's getting what he pays for. Guy still insists internet isn't working. I just ask him what he wants it to do and he blurts out, "I just want to look at PRN." Turns out his homepage had been set to a PRN site for a while and his son had restored the browser to default settings and he couldn't remember the PRN site he used to go to. I just had him Google free PRN and gave him instructions how to set something as his home page and how to navigate through a PRN site. Best customer I ever had at any job. My grandma once got worried that I deleted all her emails because I updated her browser and it reset her home page from Yahoo Mail back to Bing. Some people just don't seem to understand how computers work. There's a girl I used to work with who didn't know submarines actually existed. PSSSHHHTTT. Next you'll be telling me there are rocket ships that can take man to the moon. Get outta here. That I couldn't just go to the bathroom and pee my period out to be done with it. He was about 1920s at the time and obviously didn't have education, been married 25 years. He will never live that down. That I couldn't just go to the bathroom and pee my period out to be done with it. I've always wished it worked like that. Like, once a month. Just have a bad hour or two on the toilet. And then bounce back to life. To make pasta you have to boil the water. Mac and cheese. That shouldn't be too hard. Boil water. What am I? A chemist? Why a room below sea level on a cruise ship would not have a balcony? A balcony bubble would be pretty cool, terrifying. I was explaining to my ex-girlfriend's brother that I will be traveling to Hawaii. He asked, "Can you drive or do you have to take a plane to get there?" He's 35. That's something I would ask simply because my mouth sometimes moves way faster than my brain. In school Intro to Culinary Arts. I remember that the teacher asked what you wouldn't put in a convection oven. My brain was thinking, okay. Some sort of liquid. My mouth went ahead and said Jell-O. I know you don't cook Jell-O. But still. It would be a bad idea to put it in a convection oven. Also, that earning above a tax threshold doesn't mean you're retroactively taxed at that new band for all of your earnings. Worked with someone who turned down a pay rise because of this. There are an astonishing number of Americans who think this way. I am always met with skepticism when I try to explain it. I remember asking my friend's father this around middle or early high school. I said, "Mr. B, if you have to pay 15% tax on an income of $40,000, but 20% tax on above $40,000, does that mean that you would pay 20% on everything if you made 1 cent over $40,000? He responded by saying, "Yep. That's how it works." I responded with, "But that doesn't seem right. You would make less overall by making more at your job." He said, "That's the government for you. They're just out there to screw everyone over. You shouldn't iron your clothes while you're wearing them." One guess as to how this came up. My uncle is in the hospital. What happened? He was ironing when the phone rang. Now he has burns on both sides of his face. Both sides? He had to call the hospital. I will hate myself forever for laughing at that, especially because I know the joke.